So that's why I feel like once I start teaching percentage, but also you have to know how to sell it. Because if you don't know how to sell percentage and you say, well, I'm charging so and so month percentage with this minimum, if the client comes back and say, well, why are you worth this much, et cetera, et cetera, why do you want us to pay you this amount? If you don't know how to answer, then they know that you're bluffing.
Hey there, wedding industry insider podcast listeners. Eddie Babbage here, founder CEO of Timeline Genius, and your host of the show. Back with another exciting episode for you. I'm here with Thomas Bui. Thomas is the founder of Thomas Bui Lifestyle, which is a full-scale production company based in San Diego with a satellite office in San Francisco, and they meticulously craft luxury weddings, social affairs, and corporate events. Thomas, you have over 24 years of experience in the wedding industry, and I'm just honored and delighted to have you on the show here today.
Good morning. Thank you, Eddie. Thanks for reaching out and having me. Likewise.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's always a pleasure and treat to be able to connect with people like you, Thomas, that are doing, reputable work and that have just years of experience. And what we talked about in the pre-interview, just to kind of give people a heads up for where this interview is going. We're going to focus more on the business side of things, as we tend to do on this show. And as you put it, I love the word, like getting into the nitty gritty, getting beyond just like the photos and the veneer of like, the J-Lo wedding planner image that kind of comes to mind, and really getting into some brass tacks that will help people, I think, build and improve their businesses. But before we do all of that, Thomas, would you mind, especially for those that may not know you, just sharing a little bit about your background and how you got to be where you currently are in the industry?
Thank you, Eddie. So, as Eddie mentioned, my name is Thomas Bui. This is my 24th year in the business. Before this, I was in medicine of all careers. I
Wow.
won't lie to you. I was in pharmaceutical. I was running a company and etc. And then from there, I was working, and then went and got an MBA before I started this business. Um, but my background really started back in Vietnam because I was born and raised in Saigon. Um, Vietnamese, but more European descent. So French is my first language growing up. My dad was a minister of public health back in the days, so he traveled all over Asia, and my other family members were involved with the French politics and other political arenas. So we were always hosting black tie dignitary events at my house. So growing up, I think I was accustomed to that lifestyle. I remember at 2 years old, I was wearing a custom made tuxedo. So I think that classic, elegant style has been ingrained in me since I was a toddler.
That's
And
fine.
then so yeah, so I naturally just gravitated towards something in the design world.
Mm-hmm.
And then so I started this in the year 2000 after being in the pharmaceutical industry for many, many years.
Yeah, that must have been a really interesting time, to have started a business, leading right up to 9/11. I feel like the world shifted so much. What sort of changes, Thomas, have you seen in your decades long career in the wedding industry? What are some of the big changes that you've seen?
For me, at this point in my career, I would have to say this is a twofold question. The one thing is that probably the budget.
Mm-hmm.
Budgets is huge now. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, we're very lucky to be working with great budgets these days. And also the digital age where everything is at your fingertip. You don't have to do research like had to do back in the year 2000 when we first started. There was no Instagram, right? There was no Facebook. You would still There was Google, didn't exist by then either. So how I started, we had to pick up the phone. We used a yellow page. That was our Google
Wow.
to call people and go meet them in person, not just
Wow.
friend them and feel like, oh yeah, you're my friend because I follow you on Facebook or I answer something that you posted. But I think back in the days, you had to make the effort to really go out and meet people because you had nothing to show for. There was no cell phone to text anybody a photo. So you take a photo and then you develop it. So that takes another what, 7, 10 days to get photos back, and
Unbelievable.
then
Yeah.
right. You bring your photo album to show people.
Yeah.
I think so much has changed, but so much is still the same.
Right. Yeah.
Hmm.
And do you find, Thomas, I mean, I myself have been, in the workforce. I graduated college in 99, graduated law school in 2002. And yeah, the changes you're talking about, they're all like very like real for me
Hmm.
as well. I experienced them. We talked a little in the pre-interview about how sometimes though the art of old school can still be applied to great effect and benefit today. Meaning, I feel like in today's world of instant messaging and texting, which are all great media for communication, but something can be lost if you're not still willing to do what we're doing now, at least to interface with somebody, to meet in person or to talk on the phone. What are your thoughts
Hmm.
about like ways in which maybe you have an advantage or just touches that you're able to apply because you come from and have experienced the world before today?
Yes. So I mean, that's a great question, Addie, because I feel like the bigger the project these days, the more you have to explain your vision, the more
Yeah.
you have to actually show your vision in real time. And that means that yes, we do design decks. My design decks are 30, 40 pages long that I
Yeah.
send my clients. It's
Okay.
very, very comprehensive.
Okay.
But at the end of the day, you can't just show inspiration photos from other events and expect a client to visually realize that this is what your event looked like, but different color.
Right.
So I still have to hire someone to draw my vision for me. I
Right.
have to hire someone to do it via computer generated vision,
Hmm.
and also another artist who free draws everything as well. And that's how you have to invest in the clientele. You
Hmm.
can't expect them to, because everybody's very visual. I hate to say all my clients say the same thing, we know what we want, we don't know how to get to that stage.
Gotcha.
And it's my job to really draw it out for them. If I knew how to draw, oh my God, I mean, I could be doing so much other stuff too, Eddie. That's not the case. So you have to rely on the artist who knows what you're talking about and invest in that type of business on the side so that the clients feel like you have a vested interest into what they're doing. I mean, I can't expect them to just look at a photo and visualize everything. It's
Right.
never the case,
Right.
and especially when we're doing full service for production scale, everything is measured precisely. Um, I do many, many site visits if I have to with different vendors. So we measure everything down to the inches, to the feet, to this, to that. And so, but that's what we have to do. We're like an architect that needs to make it happen for every event, no matter the scale of the event itself.
I love that, Thomas. And, there are a few obvious sort of topics that as we're talking, I feel like we need to get into. One, I want to get into just how you got into the sort of luxury market. It's something that a lot of people talk about and want to do. Um, Two, I think I'd be remiss in my duties if we didn't go down the path of talking about like design. But before
Yes.
we do that, I want to just kind of explore an open ended question, Thomas, which is, and I alluded to this a little when we were kind of getting acquainted in the pre interview. As you
Hmm.
reflect back on the last 24 years, tell me, just sort of stream of consciousness here, tell me what jumps to mind as the most important ingredient in the recipe for your success to date? What have you done just
Really,
exceptionally well that's helped you get where you've gotten?
I think one of the most important thing I've done is build relationships, maintain relationships, putting the name to the face, and really throwing yourself out there. In the end, the further you are in your career, the group of vendors that you interact with gets smaller and smaller, right? The bigger the budget, the smaller your crowd is. But I'm different. I like to talk to everybody. I remember back in the days, Eddie, when I had to make a phone call, introduce myself. Some people said, "Well, you're not at that level yet, so we don't know. So we don't know if you're capable of doing what you do, et cetera, et cetera." Right? So, but I've had so many people just hang up and say, you're not there yet. You're not at our level, and that hurts. But at least when the
Hey,
door
Thomas,
closes,
you froze. Can you Thomas, you froze just
yeah,
for a sec. Will you just rewind 5 seconds? You were saying you would get on the phone and people would be like dubious, like you're not at that level. Just
yeah, and
repeat that
people
little
said,
thing.
yeah, people would say, well, you're too new. I don't
Yeah,
know what you have you can't prove your worth yet, and that hurts. Don't get me wrong, but
sure.
the more I've heard that, the more I said, wow, I need to really prove my worth here,
Yeah,
and I feel like once you build a relationship, it solidifies your name and your brand as to what you do, but it's also your work ethics too. You just don't, you got to show up on time, and being on time is already late, like they say.
yeah,
But you just got to show up and just don't let people down more than anything.
yeah.
You got to prove, you need to prove your worth when you're starting out more than anything. Words can only say so much, but if you can't prove yourself, no one's going to really give you that time of day, especially when you're so new starting out.
I love that, Thomas. And there's something that I think we can, myself included, sometimes lose sight of, which is business ultimately just comes down to people. Like every
Yep.
client you ever get that decides to hire you, that's a person, and a person made that decision. Every vendor you ever work with who does an A+ job of helping you create this magical event is a person. So everybody on your team, like it all does come down to people, and thus comes down to
Yeah.
relationships. I think one of the challenges that people may have, Thomas, they look and they say, well, Thomas is established. So now you've got your network. Like at that point,
Mhm.
the wind is in your sails, you've got momentum. But that early stage that you're talking about is really a critical and
Yeah.
tricky, like when you don't have the reputation, when you don't have the network, like what advice would you give to people that are in those earlier stages where maybe they haven't developed and solidified the reputation? What would you tell them to help them kind of get through that period and to get that network built?
The most important thing I would say is like ask to volunteer, with some planners that you want to learn from. Ask them if they're taking on interns. Help work, work a wedding, work a real wedding, not just read a timeline and feel like, oh my God, this is so easy. No, nothing is perfect like on a timeline on paper, right? Because on the wedding day, there's so many moving parts. What looks good on paper may not look good in real life. So that's where you have to really think on your feet and know what to do. And that's the best advice is just get out there and really do an actual event. And then that's when you'll realize that, oh, maybe I'm not cut out for this job.
Yeah.
I mean, the beautiful photos on Instagram are amazing, but the
Right.
steps to get there are never easy,
Right.
right? There's a million things you have to think about: the family dynamic, the budget, right? This, the color, the this and that, et cetera, et cetera. Um, but people don't think about all that stuff. I overstress everything. As a producer with my name on the door, I overstress everything. I would wake up at 3, 4 in the morning thinking about, oh my God, what if it rains today? What if this? What if that? What if a vendor's truck breaks down? And it happens, right? I mean, some days it just happens, and unfortunately, it might happen on the day that you need the most. But you got to know what to do. You can't just run in a corner and cry, right? And I always tell my team, never let the client see you're sweating,
Yeah.
because if that's the case, you're gonna throw every vendor off. Everybody's gonna be so stressed.
Yeah.
But we need to come together as a team. That's why for me, the most important thing is that every event, I bring a big team so that we can cover each other if we need to. I don't like to work with the bare minimum, right? Because the clients are investing in you. So it's your job to bring in an amazing team. And I always believe it's much better to have more people than I ever need, because then, we're all doing different things.
Yeah. That's really interesting, Thomas. As you were talking, I thought, we're talking about decisions. It made me think of I was listening to Jeff Bezos. This is kind of random, but I promise it ties back to what we're talking about.
Mm-hmm.
He was saying, he was talking about how he likes to get 8 hours of sleep. I was kind of amazed. I'm like, I'm struggling. I've got two kids and running Tom Genius and the podcast, and I'm barely getting that. That's for sure. But he said he does that because business comes down to decision making, right? And he's like, if I'm rested in a good place, I'm going to make those critical decisions better. All of that is context for me to ask you, as you reflect back on the building of your business, what comes to mind as like one of the best decisions that you ever made along the way building your business?
Charging your worth.
Mm,
I have to say, you have to charge your worth.
mm,
And then when I heard that back in the day, I said, wow, what does that mean? But then you start to realize, and I've heard it over and over through business people, because I come from a business background. I have an MBA as well too,
mm-hmm,
Eddie.
mm-hmm.
My dad told me back in the days, he said that, there's a million people doing the same thing,
Right.
but what's going to set you apart, right? What's going to make people want to call you or hire you? And like my parents are business people. They've run many businesses and careers, but like my dad said, hey, you can be as creative you want, but if you don't know how to manage your money,
Yeah.
you don't know how to manage a business, then you won't last more than a year in the business, which is so true. But I've also been taught, like, what is your worth? At the end of the day, how much are you making when you're putting in 300-500 hours
Yeah.
and you're charging X amount of money, and you're paying these people to work for you?
Yeah.
What is your worth in the end? And if you don't charge enough, yeah, then you're gonna be upset and cry, because at the end of the day, you're only making $1 an hour.
Yeah. Thomas, for you, this is such an important point. For you, was there kind of like a magical moment where you had to kind of, be bold and courageously raise your rates? Or just tell me a little bit about, like, was there some sort of like inflection point where you changed your pricing and it unlocked a lot of your business's
Yes, there
potential?
was. For one thing, I also learned by going to conferences and
Yeah.
engage a few times where they
Engage.
talked about
Amazing.
charging percentage
Yeah.
base, right, Eddie?
Yeah.
Back then, when I went to engage, the thing is, I tell everybody, not to change the subject, I tell everybody, you only go to engage when you're ready.
Yeah.
Because if you're new and you just want a great party, it's amazing.
Yeah.
But at the same
It
time,
is.
it's very intimidating.
Yeah.
It's also very
Yeah.
intimidating if you're not at that level,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Because like even when I went, I was established, but it's still very intimidating
Yeah.
when you're in the same room with all these,
Yeah.
you know,
Household
where
names. Yeah.
with all these amazing designers that works with 1-2% of the population, right?
Right. Right.
Their net worth is 1-2% of the
Right.
world.
Right.
So it's very intimidating.
Right.
But the thing is that what happened was that many years ago I did a wedding. The budget started at 300,000,
Mm-hmm.
and it jumped to 800,000.
Oof.
And I was charging a flat fee,
Uh,
and that's when I knew that, God, why am I busting my ass off
yes.
when I'm making so little?
Yes.
And yet, they keep adding to the budget with the florists. They
Yes.
keep adding the budget
Yes.
to the lighting,
Yes.
to this, to that. And
Yeah.
I'm like schlepping away,
Yeah.
cleaning up linens,
Yes.
inventory. It's like, why am I busting my ass off?
Yeah.
Plus I had to hire like 12, 15 people to work this wedding. It was like a 10-day setup for this wedding. And then I just, like, from then on, I got smart. So I slowly learned. So I learned from Brooke,
Oh,
from my good friend
yes.
Stephen. And
Absolutely.
Brooke always told me, Thomas, you need to charge percentage.
Yeah.
You're not surviving if you're charging a flat fee.
Yes.
And I told Brooke, I said, I truly believe you. I'm this and I'm that, and I'm honored. And she kept pushing me.
Yes.
And I said, you know what, Brooke? She said, there's no excuse here. You need to do it. If nobody else in the city does it, you need to be the one to
Yes.
do it.
Yeah.
It's going to set you apart. And then it's true, though. I mean, yeah, when I say percentage based, back in the day, it turned people off, so I would lose business. But
Sure.
I think 1% person, two people caught on, and they realize that, that there is a worth here.
Yeah.
That because when you're working with luxury, ultra luxury clients, the first person they hire is a planner, right?
Yes.
And it's our job to bring everybody on.
Yeah.
They want to see one or two
Right.
people. That's it.
Right.
They don't need a vendor list. They don't want a vendor list. They don't care for that stuff.
Right.
It's your job
Yes.
to say, this is what I want, and you make it happen. So that's why I feel like once I start teaching percentage, but also you have to know how to sell it. Because if you don't know how to sell percentage and you say, well, I'm charging so and so money percentage with this minimum, if the client comes back and say, well, why are you worth this much, et cetera, why do you want us to pay you this amount?
Yeah.
If you don't know how to answer, then they know that you're bluffing.
Yeah.
You fool people. When it comes to money, Eddie, you can't fool people.
Yeah.
They may not do weddings every day like I do.
Yeah.
They're successful. They're rich for a reason, right? Because they're really good at what they do.
Right.
But if you don't know how to sell it well and explain to them, then they're gonna say, "Oh yeah, they don't know. I can get what I want out of these people."
I am going to definitely go a little deeper down this topic of pricing and percentage based because, like you, I mean, just from a business standpoint, I think it's vitally important. I mean, to make the point in an almost extreme, impractical way, you could be doing literally the best work in the industry. But if your pricing isn't right, it's not sustainable. You're going to get beat up. You're going to just burn out. You're not going to have the compensation you need. You're not going to have the funds to invest in the areas of your business that will help you grow and really get a handle on it, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So I feel like pricing, it's interesting that you named that as like the first decision in terms of impact on your business. Quick little aside too, you and I talked in the pre-interview and you just mentioned Brooke Keegan just now. I want to let everybody know she actually came into our Facebook group and did a training. She also gave a killer podcast episode. So we'll post that in the show notes here so people can refer. She's just she's really savvy. I love Brooke. She's very direct. She's like, this is the deal. Some people kind of resist the message a little bit, I mean, it's a controversial in certain ways topic for you, Thomas. When you switch to percentage base, I'm going to presume that you were a little scared about that, right? Tell me a little bit mentally, psychologically, what was that process of making that shift like for you?
Yeah. So of course, anything new is going to be a little bit terrifying at first because you're going to lose clients because if they're calling me, they're going to call other people, and if everybody say, "Oh, I can do your wedding for a flat fee," right? Questions asked, I'll work as long as I need, and I'm still going to make the same amount. While your budget keeps going up. The most terrifying thing is like explain to the client that at the end of the day, you're still the one driving this budget. If you want to say you want to spend $500,000 on flowers, that's your decision.
Right.
But we also work. I also keep a very tight budget that my team and we devise ourselves. But it's the clients that's driving the budget, not me.
Right.
I always tell the client, I give suggestions, you make decisions. Right. It's up to you how much you want to spend. And if you're going to overspend, then you can't blame me because I expect everything in writing. Everybody has to sign off as to what we're doing before we move on to the next vendor. If you don't want to spend $50,000 on a photographer and you said, I love this one so much, I'm willing to go to 80,000. That's your decision. But if I'm saying that, your budget calls for 50,000, then I'm going to work with those people for you. So at the end of the day, they're still the one making their own decisions. I'm supplying the ones that I feel are the best in that category for them. And like I said, the people I work with, I only bring one or two people. I only recommend one or two people because that's all they care for.
So Thomas, it's interesting. I can kind of channel the minds and ears and thoughts of our listeners right now. And I can tell you for sure that a lot of people, and I don't want people to disengage if this is the case, a lot of people may say, well, heck, these numbers that Thomas is throwing out, like the vendor fees and all this stuff, like these are not the scale of my events. Like, and they may
Mm-hmm.
be thinking specifically vis-a-vis the percentage pricing model. Well, that works if you're doing the kinds of events that Thomas is doing, but I'm here in the Midwest or whatever part of the country in my market that would really be crazy. I want to say two things. First, I want to say something, then I want to ask you. The first thing I want to say
Uh-huh.
is I want everybody, if you're not, especially if you feel like you're not getting the profit you want, if you feel like you're being overworked and underpaid, I would encourage everybody to take some time to think about your pricing. Maybe hire a coach so you can start with the Brooke Keegan episode we talked about, etc. But I would also ask you, Thomas, for your candid thoughts for planners like I just described that are like, look, I'm not doing events that are that big. You know, my budgets are say 50K or whatever the number is. How
Mm-hmm.
what message or counsel would you give them about kind of assessing and potentially changing their pricing?
I always feel like to be the leader of the pack, you have to stand out. You have to do something
Mm,
different.
mm,
You can't be doing what everybody else is doing in your city,
mhm,
right?
mhm.
It's the same thing. Same thing I tell all my friends have asked me, if you're charging the same rate as the neighbors down the street, right?
Yeah,
If I'm saying like full service 20,000 and the neighbor down the street said, well, I can do 20,000 plus plus plus, I'll give you this stuff, right?
yeah,
Then in that pool, you're competing the same people. You don't stand out in your market,
right,
you know?
right.
If you want to be ahead of the game, you need to really stand out. And what makes you different? What makes Thomas different than someone down the road or someone who just did the same wedding at the same venue that I'm going to be at? What makes you different? And like I said, we all have our own style, right, Eddie? We all have our own style when it comes to business, when it comes to design, how you run your business, how you work with your team, et cetera, et cetera. Everybody has their own style. That's what clients hire you for. At this stage, nobody's asking to see your portfolio, right? They don't care. They know your name carries the weight in gold, and that's what they're hiring you for.
So,
You know,
yeah,
but
absolutely. Go ahead. Sorry.
if, if you don't, if you don't define who you are and makes you different, then you're going to be competing with the same people.
That makes a lot of sense, Thomas. So, you alluded to you said this a couple times that you have to know how to sell it if you're going to do the percentage pricing model. Let's say somebody listens to this or they go listen to Brooke's interview, they do the research and they're like, wow, I'm going to step outside of my comfort zone, which incidentally that's where all of growth happens. I think we all know that if you just stay inside your comfort zone, almost by definition you're not really growing, right? Let's say somebody is
Mm-hmm.
like, I'm going to do this thing, I'm inspired by what Thomas has said, it made a big impact for him, I'm going to shift my pricing to, say, a percentage model. What tips would you have for that very important piece of how to sell that pricing model?
Well, the most important thing is understanding their budget, knowing their budget. And you feel like, oh, yeah, I can sell percentage based on this budget, then go for it.
Mm-hmm.
But if the budget is too small,
Mm-hmm.
you're not going to make anything. They're not going to see the worth or the value in paying you a percentage base.
Right.
But let's say if the client's budget is 600,000,
Mm-hmm.
right? And you're charging 9 8 15%, 18%,
Mm-hmm.
20%, whatever it is, right?
Mm-hmm.
If you do the math, right, 600,000 at 20%, you're making 120K
Right.
overall,
Right.
right?
Right.
And then but if the budget's only 100,000 and
Right.
you're charging 20%, well, okay, they have no money left for anything else,
Right. Right.
and you haven't done anything. um, but understand the client, but I always ask the client, if your budget's at 600,000 or 700,000, what is the max that you want to spend? And then you take it from there.
Yeah.
But you got to also push the client to understand and realize that what they're getting their stuff into. Like these vendors, everybody has a different fee. There's no one fee across the board for any floors, rentals, whatever, right? No prices are ever the same. The same Shivari chair, today's $4. Someone else charges $10 for the same chair. Um, but it's also educating the client, Eddie. I feel like a lot of people don't educate the client. They just send them an invoice from so and so. I expect them to understand why these are what they're charging. I I review proposals and invoices many times, right, to make sure the dates right, the names right, locations right, and understand all the charges before I send it to the client. You can't just send them an invoice and expect them to pay it, because
Right.
there's always going to be pushback, right? I don't care how rich people are, there's always going to be pushback because they don't understand. They don't understand why it's so expensive here and there, But if you take the time to sit down and talk to them and educate them, then they're going to see the value in you as a person, because you're the right hand person, you know, and you're the one guiding them. You're the one teaching them why things are the way they are, cost. Because since COVID, labor is so expensive.
Yeah.
You can't get away paying someone $30 a day anymore. I can't pay an assistant $35 a day anymore.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So I mean, you have to factor in so many things, but the most important thing, that taking the time to really help them understand why things cost the way they do.
Yeah.
And but it's also a lot of years of experience, that where to go, how people charge, and where to take the client to, for them to trust you, that you're not just driving up the budget for you to make more money at the end of the day.
As a wedding planner, you know how important it is to create detailed wedding day timelines for your events. But creating your timelines can be a tedious and time-consuming job. Until now. Because Timeline Genius lets you create beautiful, detailed wedding day timelines with ease. And it keeps everything you need on the wedding day in one central place. Here's how it works. First, Timeline Genius saves all your clients, vendors, and venues in your Rolodex, so you don't lose time looking for their information. And when you're ready to create a new timeline, you simply enter the key information for your wedding. Click a button, and voila! Timeline Genius magically gives you a customized timeline for your event, where all the details are laid out and the times are calculated for you. From there, you can easily edit your timeline by adding or deleting items, inserting images, changing font styles, and customizing everything to your liking. You can also instantly shift the times for as many items as you want. And when it comes to your clients and vendors, Timeline Genius lets you give them the highest level of service. You can send them tailored timelines, showing only the items they're involved in. And you can collaborate by inviting them to a mobile-friendly, web-based version of the timeline. You can even set text message reminders to automatically go out on the wedding day. And once you've completed your perfect timeline, you can download it or email it out as a beautifully styled PDF. And that's Timeline Genius, a smart software that will help take your wedding planning to the next level. Start your free trial today.
We're talking about, without squarely addressing it, the notion of operating in the luxury market. I know that a lot of people listening, not everybody, I mean, some people listening, Thomas, they're doing their weddings and they're not in the sort of, so-called luxury market, but they're enjoying what they're doing. That's their sweet spot, and that's awesome. I happen to know also that some percentage of people, as they're kind of looking ahead down, further in their career path, they are thinking, wow, I would love to kind of break into the luxury market. How did you do it? Like, take me back to the time when you first started sort of swimming upstream and getting some of these higher budget weddings. How were you able to pull that off?
I was, it really started with doing more interior feel, rather than just concentrating on the floral and the table, right?
Okay.
Because it's not just that, because I started to think that, well, your eye, when you walk into your room, right, you look at everything eye level. But I said, what if we expand it and make it to the ceiling? Add stuff to the ceiling so that it becomes more like a 3D effect,
Okay.
right? And then not just uplighting and pin spotlights, but more theatrical lighting too,
Okay.
right? Because that's what attracts people, right? The lighting makes all the difference
Right.
in any room, no matter what we do. And so I like to design stuff on the ceiling. I like to design movement. I like to design a lot of texture. At the same time, I also bring in stuff from other cities as I feel suits the client better too. Because sometimes you have to go out of your comfort zone, right? You have to spend the money to get the rentals shipped from New York or wherever, just for that, just for them to feel like, oh yeah, we have something different that hasn't been seen before.
Mm-hmm.
So we do like custom stuff too as well. I just feel like you have to get out of your comfort zone if you want to get to that next level. You need to build the connections in Europe. Since we work in Europe and Mexico, you need to know people there. You can't just bring the same people all the time, right? Because you might as well just stay home if you're going to do that. But it's also knowing what's out there around the world, and then seeing if we can get something close to in the States if they don't want to spend the money. But that's where you feel like the sky's the limit, right, Eddie?
Yeah.
When you really expand your brand, you really think beyond Pinterest and Instagram, but just, knowing what's out there so that you can show the client so that they feel like, wow, you're really investing in what we do. You're really investing in our event here. And that's the whole point of being a producer.
And did you know right from the start, Thomas, did you have a mental vision? A lot of times they tell us in business and entrepreneurship, have your vision board and all of that. Did you know in advance that this is where you wanted to end up in the luxury market when you started?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
I'll show you how I started. I was like I said, I was in pharmaceuticals in the past,
Okay.
So what I did back in the days was, like I said, back then people spent money for print ad, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because there was no internet back then. So I made little flyers, just past events that I've done for family and friends. But I hired a nice photographer who captured it really well.
Okay.
So I made a little flyer and I put in the break room at the hospital.
Uh-huh.
Because I knew that a lot of the doctors and nurses
Sure.
and stuff, they marry each other, right? They
Yeah.
date, because that's all they know. They don't go anywhere else except the hospital. I knew that they marry each other, but they don't. But they also have the nice income to
Yeah.
spend.
Yeah.
money.
Yeah.
So that's how I wanted to promote myself.
Interesting.
I was at the vision of, yeah, I want to do these big stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah, granted, I mean, I did some little ones just to get my foot in the door, but ultimately, I just felt like I was promoting myself to the market that I want to align myself with.
Yeah. Well, that's really smart. And, in, tech startup language, it's finding that initial target market, and you can expand beyond that, but like having, not just spraying and praying, your message on Instagram, in today's world, we have Instagram and other tools, but having like a focused sort of group of people or like an avatar, that you're focused on serving. Sounds like that was effective for you. It was effective? Like that worked for you? You were able to kind of get that initial momentum from doing that?
I did. My first client was 2 ER doctors, and from there she introduced me to other doctors there. So just from that one hospital setting, I did like 10 weddings for them.
That's really cool.
And from there it slowly grew here and there, and I started to do other stuff. I started to brand myself with law firms, right? Because they do a lot of dinners.
Yeah.
They do a lot of that. So I said, yeah, I can do dinners. I can do this. I can do that. So, but that's how you grow, right? You got to start somewhere. But I feel like I always like to set my standards high. I always like to give myself 10 rings, to make sure I can get up there. Yeah, do I make it all the time? No, but once you get there, you want to go up 20 more steps, right? I don't want to be staying at the same area the rest of my life. I like challenging myself, Eddie. You
Yeah.
know, I love working at a brand new space where we're building things from the ground up.
Do you still
Hmm.
enjoy this? I mean, and I mean, you've been. It's not an easy job. There's so
No.
many stress points.
Oh yeah.
So many stress
Mhm.
points in what you do. Are you still fulfilled and joyful as you do
Yeah,
this work, Thomas? Yeah.
I do. I love it even more.
Yeah.
I feel like I love it more because now I'm able to really throw out my creative ideas for all these
Yeah.
clients too.
Yeah.
They understand it because they can afford it and they have the right budget to make it happen. So that's why I feel like I love it. I mean, stressful, yeah, right? Because I'm working with drawings, I'm working with
Yeah.
architects, I'm working with these people, that people, right? Production stuff. Yeah, it's stressful, but once it happens, then yeah, I just feel fulfilled that wow, some things that back in the day, some things I got great ideas, but like I tell my clients, my ideas are only as good as the client who's willing to invest in it,
Yeah.
right? Otherwise, it just sits in my brain,
Yeah.
But it takes a real client to value you and want to invest in all these ideas that you have for them.
So I'm going to do something here, Thomas. I'm going to do a quick little aside for Timeline Genius, and then I want to get into the topic of design again because I feel like
Uh
I'd be
huh.
remiss in my duties if I didn't. But the quick aside for
Mm-hmm.
anybody out there, or wedding planners especially, if you are, you obviously know what a wedding day timeline is. It's your detailed blueprint for the big day. And I want everybody to know that Timeline Genius is a solution that will help you create industry leading, totally customized, beautiful wedding day timelines in a fraction of the time that it used to take. We have this AI that we developed long before people were talking about
Wow.
ChatGPT. We were building out this tool that lets you put in, the religious tradition, the ceremony time, all the how long you have the
Mm-hmm.
photographer booked, etc. You click this button, it generates a tailored timeline for that event. You can totally customize it. You can set text reminders to go out on the event day. You can insert images and your floor plan, all the contact information, everything you need is in one place to have an A+
Mm-hmm.
event. So if you're interested, folks, they can go to timelinegenius.com. Free
Sure.
trial, watch the video on the homepage. And I would say, yeah, just very honestly, it's the world's best tool for creating, collaborating on, and executing wedding
Uh
day
huh.
timelines. So that's my plug there. But Thomas, I want to bring it back to you to talk about
Yeah.
design. Um, I
Mm-hmm.
know our audience generally falls into two buckets. They either love the logistical side of things or they love the sort of design side of it. Every now and then I find people that kind of straddle in kind of both buckets. For the people out there
Mm-hmm.
that are into design, I want to ask, where do you get your inspiration for the events that you're designing?
My inspiration a lot of times comes from the client because they all have a dream, right? They all have this, they all have that they want to do. And so it starts with the client. And then, once a client gives me a few snippets here and there,
Mm-hmm.
then I generally can run away a mile with it. And I think that's how I'm able to sell my vision and design, Eddie. So, a client wants this and that. So, I mean, I can say, we can do this, we can do that. I can just rattle off so many things. And they say, wow, you really know what you're doing. I said,
Yeah,
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 but I think these days, what makes me successful is that I'm very confident what I sell.
yeah,
I don't have to second guess myself. I think that's, of course, things you learn through time,
yeah.
right? By trial
Experience.
and
Yeah,
error, many years of experience.
right.
So now I don't have to second guess myself. I can throw out ideas and they know what I'm talking about but at the same time, they understand what I'm trying to say. Because back in the days, you're a little reluctant to say what you want to say because you're not confident enough. These days, I know I can sell anything. I can throw it out there. Do they love 100% what I do or say? No.
Right.
But everything
It's a
is
back and forth.
is a work in
Yeah, right.
progress. Everything's a work in
Right.
progress. But but once it clicks that they know what I'm trying to sell them or explain to them, then they understand. I think that's the most important thing. Selling your confidence is the most important thing.
Yeah, it's funny.
You
That's kind of
know.
a through line here, Thomas. Whether it's pricing or whether it's a design, there's something to be said for the energy and the confidence that you bring to saying it. But it's also a little like chicken egg, because the confidence comes from the experience, right? In your mind, you've been doing this for years. You've seen things through from concept to execution
Hmm.
so many times that
Hmm.
it gives you that confidence. But you're right. I think people can sense, that sort of inner confidence that you're bringing. Um, what did you do
Hmm.
along the way, Thomas, I mean, obviously, some part of what you're doing is your natural sort of interest and skill set and talents, but also some part of it is, like you're saying, experience and it's learned. What did you
Hmm.
do, and what can people listening to us do to up their design IQ? Are there magazines? Are there shows? Are there courses? Like, what do you do if you want to get better at designing? What can you do to do that?
I do. You know what? I read a lot of interior design magazine,
Mm,
Architectural
hmm
Digest. I
hmm
love Miranda magazine.
hmm
This is one of my favorite magazines. Town and Country for the fashion. I like Vogue, Italian Vogue, right? I like Vogue from Europe and Asia. I like to read a lot, but I also like to read a lot of business books too, self-help book. Because this business, you have to wear many, many hats. You can't just say, "Oh, I want to do one design and that's it," right? I only want to design and no logistic. It doesn't work that way. Um, so I feel like to be good at what you do, you have to know every facet of the business. It takes time, right? Reading a book, like who has time these days to read a book?
Yeah.
I really don't.
Yeah.
I'm like staying up to 10, 11, trying to answer emails
Yeah.
throughout the
Yeah.
day. Um, but when the client's investing in you, you need to invest in your business.
Amen. Yeah, you
You
really
know, you
do.
need yourself. You need to invest in not. I don't want to say the trends, right? Trends come and go, but you need to invest in different ideas for them.
If you had,
And also invest in yourself because I wake up at 5 so I can go to the gym.
yeah,
I feel like the 6 o'clock yoga box that I do
yeah,
for an hour.
mm,
That's one day of my mind to clear my. That's one day out of my day. That's 1 hour out of my day for me to clear my mind.
right.
And and I always tell my clients, I'm working out for me, but also for you too. Because if I can't be healthy on your wedding day or work for
That's
you,
right.
then right, then no one's gonna run the show for me.
Yeah,
So I have to take care of myself just as much as I take care of you.
yeah, yeah. I'm so squarely in your camp on that at this point, Thomas. I've always been, I practiced law, did investment banking, and came from these cultures where like people were just in hustle mode. But at this point, I've
Yeah.
definitely learned it's kind of that Jeff Bezos idea that I alluded to, where he's like, I get 8 hours of sleep so that you can be your best, most creative self. And I find when I'm tired,
Yeah.
when I'm not taking care of my body and exercising, I'm not there.
Yeah. Yeah.
You mentioned books, Thomas. If you had to pick one book that just had a profound impact, a positive impact on your business, what's one book that really jumps to mind?
But there's two books. There's one book that I read years ago during COVID. It's called Never Split the Difference.
I've
It's
heard
about
great
the
things
art of
about that. Okay.
it's the art of negotiating.
Okay.
And recently I just read this book. I know it's been out a while. It's called Leaders Eat Last by Simon Sinek.
Hmm.
He's amazing.
Yeah.
He's a
Yeah.
great public speaker. But I just love his insight, right? And then one of my idols, Colin Cowie, where he wrote his last book about the white glove service, which I love because it's so classic, old school that
Yeah.
I feel it's missing these days. I just love, the little nuances, the little details. But that's what makes an event, right?
Yeah.
It's the details. I'm not just talking about the detailed photos. It's the texture. on a table, right? Because when I design a table, I'm thinking about 30 items on the table.
Yeah.
Not just the flowers, there's never salt and pepper on my table in any of my photos,
Mm-hmm.
right? There's never water glasses filled with water. I don't like that look of, I don't like that look of condensation on a glass, right, Eddie? It just ruins the whole photo.
Yeah.
Just little things like that, right? And, and then, we all have rulers, so we measure so many distances from the charger to the edge of the table. Chairs are never squeezed, tucked into a linen. They're barely touching the linen. Little things like that, that annoys me that people don't realize, or, but I'm also very particular. If a rental company delivers a chair that has little scratches in there, that can't be the first thing you see when you walk in a room. So you have to move it, or you order extra so that these places can be replaced. And I, when we're setting up, Lemos China, we always wear gloves because I don't want fingerprints on these things.
Right.
Clients may not notice that, guests may not notice it, but I do, and that's the whole important because I'm their eyes and ears. That's what they're investing in me for, right?
They're not going to notice, but it may not be something that they specifically call out, or it may not even be something that they articulate to themselves, but everybody can feel when something has been meticulously crafted and when every detail, it's like a great meal, like you don't even necessarily go through the list of all the things that the chef did right, but it all amounts to this amazing experience,
And same thing, when people ask, description as to what we do, I said, what we do, it's hard to quantify what we do.
Yeah.
I can't list every single thing that I do.
Yeah.
But if you don't list enough, then you say, oh, that's all.
Yeah.
But I said, the planner designer, there's no limit, right, as to what we do. I mean, we spend so many hours in a day on the phone, doing emails, going here, going there. But it's a lot. I mean, you understand it, Eddie. Everybody that you talk, that you interview with. But at the end of the day, you can't really sit here and try to explain everything that you do.
I do want to just call out for folks. There's an interview we did with Colin Cowie, and it was amazing. It was about just vision and creativity, and it's fantastic. So we'll put that in the show notes as well. So Thomas, I see the time flying here, and there's one question that I always ask of folks before I let them go, and I'll put this question to you now. Just whatever comes to mind here. So the question is, if you could give just one piece of advice to people who are listening that would help them as much as possible build their business based on all of your professional experience, not even just the 24 years in this industry, but just everything that you've experienced, what one valuable piece of advice would you give to people?
The most important thing I feel is build relationships.
Yeah.
Build true relationships with the people you want to align with, right? With the people you idolize to help you get to the level that you want to be.
Yeah.
But like I said, but only when you're ready. I can't make that decision for you. You can't say that. Nobody can tell you, but only when you feel like, yeah, it's time for me to step up. Oh yeah, it's time for me to charge more. I just, like I said, you need to build strong relationships because it needs to be in a point where you can have all these numbers on your phone and say, oh yeah, I know this person that can get me out of this. I know this person that has what we need, right?
Yeah.
Eddie?
Yeah.
Anybody around the world I can reach out to and say, oh, do you have this? How would you make this work?
Yeah.
And not only build relationships, build real relationships, not just superficial, not just people that you're calling when you need something. Right? I mean, nobody wants that friendship these days, but I know we're all busy. But it boils down to, there's only a handful of people that you talk to on a daily basis. But, but don't call me or you once a year because you need something, right? That's not a real relationship. And, you got to really cultivate the people that you want to work with and be in your life. because once they see how genuine you are, they will refer to you more.
Yeah.
But like everybody's different. I like to pick up the phone and call people rather than text.
Me too.
If you have a real problem with me, let's talk it out, right? Don't wait till a month down the road and rehash something that you said was fine, right? If you don't like something, best to tell it now. I think in this business, we've all have thick skin. We don't take anything personally. And I've learned that, yes, it hurts, when you're first starting, right? You take things personally, but now I just feel like you have to have a thick skin. You can't just cry or something bad happens, I mean, every single event, there's always something new to learn. So many new things to learn that you don't think about, especially adding a little bit more to your contract these days too. But that's why I said, align with the people that you want to be associated with, right? Make a real connection. If you want to be in the ultra luxury market or understated elegance, seek out the people and build relationships with them.
Yeah, I love that, Thomas. And that's a great place for us to leave it, because it kind of brings us full circle. We started off talking about the importance of relationships and how the whole industry is governed by people and relationships. And I think that's just a great, great place, a great message to kind of leave folks with. Let me ask this, Thomas. If people want to reach out to you for whatever reason, there are a lot of people that will, hear this this interview. What's the best way for them to get in touch with you?
They can email me directly. I answer all my emails myself. I don't have a secretary. I answer all my emails. I answer all my phone. I answer every single phone call that comes through. So they can always contact me, Thomas at Thomas Bui Lifestyle. I'm on Instagram, LinkedIn, Facebook. I don't post enough on Facebook. I'm more active on LinkedIn and Instagram these days.
Yeah.
I like LinkedIn. I'm starting to use it more now, Eddie, because I think it's create so much wealth of business.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a different market out there on LinkedIn, but I really like what people say, and it's about business. There's nothing social on LinkedIn, which I like too.
Yeah, it's a great platform. There's so many tools and ways to connect these days. Thomas, it's just been an absolute, pleasure having you on the show. And I encourage anybody that wants to reach out to go ahead and do so. And I just want to say thank you on behalf of all of our podcast listeners, on behalf of the Tom Legends community. It's been fun. Yeah, it's been a real treat having you on.
Thank you so much for your time. And I know there's a lot going on, especially summertime, but I appreciate you reaching out to me and letting me tell my side of the story and how I run my business.